Good morning. I'm Hassan Giordano, and this is your DMV Daily Dose for Friday, February 21st, 2020.
It's currently clearing 23 degrees in Baltimore. Today's high will be 37 degrees, and the low will be 23.
Well, Democratic presidential candidate Michael Bloomberg on Thursday named former Baltimore Mayor Stephanie RawlingsBlake as one of his national political co-chairs. In the role, RawlingsBlake joined several other former mayors: Philadelphia's Michael Nutter, Miami's Manny Diaz, and Los Angeles' Antonio Villaraigosa. RawlingsBlake will advise the campaign on policy development and strategy and serve as a national surrogate for Bloomberg. Now, Josh Kurtz of Maryland Matters is reporting on how Governor Larry Hogan launched a blistering attack on Democratic lawmakers Thursday, accusing them of blocking vital anti-crime legislation for political purposes and suggesting that a proposal from House leaders to fund a major education reform plan could ruin the Maryland economy. Hogan's message, delivered in a heated midday State House news conference and through radio interviews, newspaper reports, and social media, came as lawmakers resist his top proposals to address violent crime in the city of Baltimore, which he labeled the most important priority of the people of Maryland. Now, Hogan, a Republican, in his criticisms, which included a call for the new chairman of the Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee to resign, set off an extraordinary day of charges and countercharges between the chief exec and the members of the Maryland General Assembly, which key lawmakers accusing him of political grandstanding and hyperbole. Now, Hogan, whose political operation conducts polls frequently, repeatedly cited survey data to accuse Democrats of subverting the will of the people on his crime proposals. Quote, "The public is literally crying out, pleading with the legislature to take these actions," Hogan asserted during his news conference, which was attended by 24 Republican state lawmakers. The governor said that there have been 104 shootings in Baltimore City since the legislative session began on January 8th, an indirect implication that lawmakers are to blame. Specifically, Hogan is trying to whip up support for 3 crime bills that the legislature has resisted so far. One, the Violent Firearm Offenders Act, which would significantly increase penalties for criminal offenses committed with guns. Hogan said that 85% of Marylanders and 85% of Baltimore City residents support the measure. The second is the Judicial Transparency Act, which would create a database of the criminal sentences handed down by judges. Hogan said also that 85% of Marylanders and 93% of Baltimore City residents support this legislation. And the third is the Witness Intimidation Prevention Act, which toughened penalties for witness intimidation. Hogan said that 91% of Marylanders and 97% of Baltimore City residents support that measure. "I don't believe that there has ever been bills before the legislature that has had more enthusiastic, nearly unanimous support," Hogan said. Now, the governor added that he was declaring his 3 bills emergency legislation to ensure that it expedited consideration in the legislature and that they would go into effect immediately upon passage. But actually, he can't do that. Traditionally, the governor's legislation is introduced by the Maryland General Assembly's presiding officers as a courtesy. While those bills can be amended during the committee process and made to be into emergency legislation, Hogan cannot unilaterally decree them as such. He did, however, send a letter to the Judicial Proceedings Committee on Thursday requesting the designation. Now, in our interview with the Baltimore Sun, published on Thursday, Hogan offered particularly barbed criticism of the Senate Judicial Proceedings Chairman, William Smith Jr., a Democrat from Montgomery County, who took over the committee in January after serving for 9 months as a U.S. Naval Reserve in Afghanistan. Smith has said he opposes Hogan's violent offenders bill because it would impose mandatory minimum sentences for certain crimes, which he does not believe are effective. Now, caught right coming out of the Senate floor session, Smith accused Hogan himself of being reckless and intellectually dishonest in the way he is framing the debate about violent crime in the city of Baltimore. Smith further sought to address the governor's criticism at the beginning of the judicial proceedings hearing on Thursday afternoon. He said that the draconian strategies of the past have not worked to reduce crime and that mandatory minimums destroyed and disseminated generations of Marylanders, most of whom are black and brown. Now, he added that if the governor wants to pursue a policy that requires mandatory minimums, that he should support the data implemented by implementing these new mandatory minimums, and then please come down to his committee and give it to us, present it to us in testimony. And then we can wrestle with the intellectually honest conversation. The governor has got to start leading and stop polling, Smith added. Now, the Baltimore Sun is reporting on Governor Hogan, who yesterday as well vowed to oppose the proposed change in the sales tax that would reduce the rate, but to expand who pays it by charging it to an array of services from landscaping to lawyers. It's not ever going to happen while I'm governor, and I can promise you that, the Republican governor said during the same news conference yesterday. Now, Democratic lawmakers introduced a bill earlier in the day to expand the sales tax, saying that would raise millions of dollars needed to improve public schools while having a minimal impact on most Maryland families. The rate would drop from 6% to 5%, but the tax would apply to a vastly broader range of business and service transactions. The estimated $2.6 billion per year the expanded sales tax would generate would be earmarked to pay for school improvements recommended by the Kerwin Commission, such as increased teacher pay, expanded kindergarten, and more support for schools in low-income neighborhoods. Now, lawmakers have spent the first half of the 90-day General Assembly weighing proposals for how to raise money for the Kerwin Commission. The bottom line is this is one way we can fully fund our schools, said Delegate Eric Lutwick, a Montgomery County Democrat who is the bill's chief sponsor. However, Governor Hogan blasted the sales tax proposal during his news conference, reminding legislators and the public of the 43 tax hikes his predecessor, Martin O'Malley, enacted over 8 years, making him the least popular governor in America and crushing the state's economy. Hogan said he collected more sales tax would erase economic gains made in the state during his tenure as governor and, quote, destroy our economy. Now, the Baltimore Sun's Talia Richmond is reporting that when Baltimore decided to earmark millions of dollars for local youth organizations, the city celebrated. The new Children and Youth Fund was designed to funnel taxpayer dollars towards grassroots organizations that work with young people, the kinds of small groups often overlooked by traditional grant programs. But in more than 2 years since the first grants were distributed, frustrations have mounted over how the money is doled out. A city council committee held a hearing yesterday night to get an update on the progress after youth advocates raised concerns about delays regarding the next round of funding allocations. Quote, we know this youth fund is critically important, said the Baltimore City Councilman Zeke Cohen, chair of the Education and Youth Committee, but we know that there has also been challenges and stumbles along the way, he says. Voters approved the fund's creation by referendum in 2016, guaranteeing that a percentage of the city's tax revenues each year would flow towards youth-focused grassroots organizations. It is intended to provide funding for community-based, minority-led organizations that typically have been passed over for funding. The city paid Associated Black Charities $1.2 million to administer the first round of grants. But officials say that amount of money was not sufficient to do the work necessary to run the fund, and it must be increased to ensure long-term success. Now, the CEO of Associated Black Charities said that they're meeting with grantees now to move forward with another round of money. But that CEO, Diane Bell McCoy, said that it's been challenging to balance the need to ensure accountability for taxpayer dollars and the kind of flexibility required to run this kind of fund. Quote, government doesn't have any tolerance for mistakes, she said, but innovation means that there will be mistakes. Well, there's no mistakes in this report, and I'm your man, Mr. Politics, and this has been your DMV Daily Dose for Friday, February 21st, 2020. For more information on the articles that I've mentioned, just going over to that website that never has any mistakes, www.dmvdaily.news.